title of my talk is Dialectics and Progress. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, many socialists have questioned whether any form of socialism is possible. One result has been a kind of what I would call future shyness, which you can find in the writings of so many on today. Well, what does critique of capitalism without any accompanying conception of communism look like? It describes how capitalism works, shows who gets screwed and by how much, offers a moral condemnation of same, prescribes haute demure reformist solutions. Because these don't work, lapses into emotional despair and cynicism. Sound familiar? Marx would not have been pleased. For despite the absence of any single book or even essay on the future in his work, there are no writings by Marx, no matter how small, exception a couple of really small letters, where he doesn't give some indication of what he thinks that future is going to be like. If Hegel's Owl of Minerva comes out at dusk and also returns at dusk, Marx's owl stays around to herald the new dawn. And it is not unfair to characterize the humanizing changes that Marx projects for the future as progress. This imaginative reconstruction of the future has been sharply criticized by many people, including a lot of people who are quite sympathetic to Marx, as being teleological. The truth of this charge, of course, depends on just how we understand teleology. Here, I would like to just read a couple of pages from a book that I'm currently writing on communism. And the reason I do so is because I don't want to miss any distinctions, and also because I think the wording is quite important. We all recognize in a general way, at least in a general way, the potential in ourselves, in others, and in the world about us. Potential is that part of what something is that it has yet to become. It is a future state or condition of something that exists in the present, grasped as an essential part of it, as real in its own way as the various sense-perceptive qualities by which we have come to know the subject in question. Potential may never be realized and still be a potential. This is because things can have contradictory potentials, so that the realization of one, and not necessarily the most probable one, short-circuits the others. When something does not realize what we take to be its outstanding potential, of course, it might also be that we were mistaken in what that something was in the first place. Marx's entire analysis of capitalism is an attempt to reveal its potential for becoming other than it now is. That is, other than how it now appears and functions. And as such, it is a major part of his subject, even when the future is not explicitly mentioned. Socialism and communism is his name for that potential. Potential is our word for it. Given this concern with capitalism's potential, how does Marx's approach to the future differ from the teleological one with which it is often confused. In teleological thinking, explanations go backwards, from an assumed and inevitable future to the present. Where X is necessarily heading is taken as an adequate account of what it now is. Purpose fulfilled has replaced cause. There is no effort to investigate the nature of the present or its real past in order to derive its likely development. The future, from which one extracts the purpose, is taken as given, finished, and already existing somewhere, if only in the mind of a supreme being. In this way, for example, some Christians have used heaven and hell, and some hell, to explain life on earth. Teleology, therefore, is not simply a matter of believing that society is headed in a particular direction, or that the tie between the present and future is an eternal one, that one cannot be fully separated from the other, which is how I understand an eternal tie between the present and the future. Or even that grasping the future state of a subject helps make sense of its present condition, all of which Marx believes. And these things are often confused with teleology. Instead, what distinguishes Marx's view from a teleological one is whether what is believed to lie ahead emerges from a study of the present and the past, or is just assumed, whether it is unfolding and incomplete, or finished and exact, whether it is considered likely or certain, and whether this future, once grasped, helps explain the present, or is the summum bonum of that explanation. The one view is empirical and probabilistic, the other mystical and dogmatic. A further distinction in Marx's case is that the future he foresees does not occur whatever we do, but only through our efforts, so that understanding the potential in the present, insofar as it aids such efforts, becomes an indispensable precondition for its realization. Traditionally, teleological modes of thought have been used to justify various oppressive hierarchies by treating them as serving some greater purpose, whether in this life or the next. Slavery, patriarchy, and serfdom have all benefited at one time or another from such a rationale. The rejection of teleological thinking, therefore, was historically progressive. But in our period, an overreaction has brought about an equally one-dimensional focus on appearances, so that the potential in our present situation for its positive transcendence has been lost sight of. The latter, as Marx has shown, can be investigated and thought about in a non-teleological manner. It is because Marx does not have a teleology that I prefer to speak of his projecting the future rather than predicting it. Prediction, like prophecy, allows no exceptions, pretends to an impossible precision and accuracy, and has no necessary connection to analyzing either present or past. While projection is based foursquare on such an analysis, is necessarily imprecise, allows exceptions, and is therefore wholly probable. Marx projects communism. He doesn't predict. So, how does Marx project communism? And from what does he project? There are actually several interrelated approaches that he uses, but given the constraints of time, I can only talk about one which I consider the most important. First of all, the evidence for communism surrounds us on all sides and can be seen by everyone in our society. It lies in conditions which already have what we might call a socialist edge. I'm thinking here of workers and consumer cooperatives, nationalized industries, socialized medicine, municipal ownership of various kinds, and so on. It also lies in conditions that don't seem to have anything socialist about them, like the amount of wealth which is produced in capitalism, the ability of the forces of production to produce still more wealth, the level of science, the level of education, the practice, as imperfect as it is, of democracy, not just in politics but throughout society. And evidence for socialism can also be seen in some of the worst problems of capitalism.